Well, one of the milestones that all of you have as a part of your soul plan is to remember that everyone is the same, that no one is superior or inferior to another. Every single soul here that is incarnated at this time has that as a part of their soul map. To remember that all are extensions of Source. And in fact, what we'll say here is what reincarnation is when you have not remembered. When you have not remembered within an incarnation that everyone is equal and everyone is the same, you come back as the very thing that you rejected, judged, or hated. And so many of you are playing out the themes of the energy that you were not able to accept in a former lifetime.
Erin Lyons, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Well, I'm 8 months pregnant, so I am excited to meet my baby boy very soon. And really, I'm excited to co-create with him as his own being and soul, coming forth with his own intentions, and understanding that I'm here to support that in whatever way that I can. So I'm just excited to see, how it all continues to unfold.
Well, it'll also be a little bit of a reconnection because you said that your baby boy has been with you this entire lifetime as a spirit guide. So you're going to be
Yes.
meeting him for the first time in physical form. So what is that even
Exactly.
like of having a baby that's coming in that you've already attuned your energy around for such a long time since you were
Mm.
open psychically?
Um, it feels like an added layer of support in the physical because I know he's going to be a big part of the work that I continue to do for the planet. And so it feels like having another one of your spiritual crew, right, from the other side come here in the physical and reunite with you. And I know he's going to be such a magnificent teacher to me as well. So I'm excited to be a parent, but also be a student and be open to the next levels of my own expansion.
Mm. And you were telling me that you grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and you were based
Yes.
around New York City when you were in your Wall Street days and in San Diego. But your soul is from a different universe. You said that it's coming through from the angelic kingdom. So tell us about that in specific.
Yeah. What I'm actually being guided to say right now, just because we can get caught up in labels, right? And get caught up in I'm from here, or I'm from here. And I just want to say I'm just from source. All of us are from source. And our soul will take a different path to come into this dimension, but ultimately we are all from source. And that feels more resonant in my being right now to emphasize.
Mm, yeah. And the more I dove into your story, I recognize the amount of synchronicities and similarities that we've had in both our journeys. I also had a pretty big spiritual awakening in college, and that's what sort of started all of this. I know that when I was in sophomore year, I started reading a lot and I started getting to spiritual books, one of them being
Mhm.
Conversations with God, in
My
exactly the same time
favorite.
frame where you were reading that book in sophomore year of college. I'd
Yes.
love to go a little bit deeper because it's not as common that in your college experience, when you're getting so exposed to parties and living on your own for the first time,
Mhm.
having such a deep remembrance of who you are, where you came from. What was that experience like for you in your college years?
You know, it really was, it felt like being an alien, if that's the best way I can describe it, because you're balancing two realities. You're balancing being the college student, the young adult, the person pursuing the degree, and still being social. Like, I still was a very social, outgoing person. I still went to parties. I still did all the things. But behind closed doors, there was this whole other world opening up to me. And you sort of learn, or I learned how to, what do we call it, code switching, or just, I don't know, I just became really good at integrating it. And it's interesting because today I see that's the number one thing that people struggle with is the integration. How do I go around my family and friends um after I just binge watched, I don't know, Emilio's podcast and cracked my consciousness open, and it's really difficult for people when they compartmentalize. But I just really grew to be able to blend my inner world and adapt to whatever situation or environment I was in. And to be honest, it probably was because not that many people were having these conversations, so I didn't really have a choice but to learn how to become adaptable.
Hmm. And yeah, because when we go into this sort of spiritual world, some of us, like you and me, we feel called to work in that space, work in
Mhm.
that industry. But a lot of people who are spiritual are working in many different fields. They're working in music, they're working in finance. You went into Wall Street. You were working at the top, private banking firms in the world, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, all of these huge, huge institutions. And you said that your success there, a lot of it was coming from your wisdom and knowledge around quantum, metaphysical, universal laws. What was having that knowledge like in a different space other than what we're working in now in the spiritual
Mhm,
community,
mhm,
in the
mhm.
spiritual industry? What was that like for you of applying that into
Yeah.
such a big industry like the finance industry?
So I want to sort of connect this back to college and being able to integrate these two worlds. So for me, integrating these two worlds from the beginning allowed me to have, I would say, more grounded goals for what I wanted to do with my life. And so spirituality for me, when that realm opened up, it was also about me just manifesting the highest vision for my life that I can imagine. And that's what created this sort of this desire, this passion to go to Wall Street, become a wealth manager, and something to me that represented massive success is ultimately what I was going for. And so accomplishing that and manifesting that and getting there, it really just felt like a game of reality. That's what it was to me. Understanding that I was having a spiritual experience and that I could create whatever version of that experience that I wanted, it made it just a game. And that's a part of a lot of what I teach now is that reality really is your own game. Once you awaken to who you are as an extension of source, what's next? It's that you create at the highest level that you can. And so a lot of people think, "Oh, she probably hated it, so she left it," because there's like this stigma around like money, finance, Wall Street, it's corrupt, it's this and that. But for me, the entire experience was deeply, deeply spiritual. There were a lot of spiritual initiations in terms of applying what I knew conceptually in a real world format to be able to manipulate energy, manipulate my reality, manipulate the results that I experienced in my business. So that's what it was like for me.
Yeah. I want to highlight what you said there of, you are in finance, which most of the people might have a distorted purview around what that industry is like, will be like, that's so evil. Banking is so evil. But you can
Right.
bring spirituality anywhere you go, like
Exactly.
literally anywhere. And it's so interesting because you mentioned that you started seeing it as this game that we get to create all the time while you're working so closely with money and huge transactions that go around on a global scale. Was your perception of money the same as it is now, or has that shifted as well?
At the time, going into that space, I had already had deep awakenings around money, so I didn't have an issue with money. But what did change was my ability to be comfortable with wealth in terms of talking about $100,000 for most people might feel uncomfortable, and for me, it grew to being to the level of talking about $1 million became talking about like $100,000. So expanding my capacity to really neutralize money, like it really just became energy. But also when you're dealing with those types of transactions, or you're dealing with people who've amassed a certain amount of wealth, you demystify what that means and you just develop a comfortability. And I'll say that has carried into how I deal with money now, how I experience money, how I see money, how I feel about money. I'm like very neutral. There's not a dollar amount we could talk about that would ever make me feel uncomfortable, but you have to calibrate to that. So I think being immersed in that world really was a bonus in terms of healing beliefs about money.
Yeah. It almost feels like there's also a factor of worthiness, because when you bring up that number of 1 million and people shrink, it's like, am I even worthy to be having a conversation about $1 million?
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to us about that worthiness inside
Sure.
of being able to receive things into our reality.
You know, I remember one of my first hiring managers when I worked at Morgan Stanley. Um, he goes, you should be bringing in all $1 million accounts. So in wealth management, the idea is that you're always raising assets. And here I am, I'm 23 and I'm fresh in New York City. And I think I don't even know someone who has $100,000. Like, how is that even possible? It was just totally out of my realm of what I could fathom. But being in an environment and being around people that felt so confident that that was possible and that that was just the norm raised my energetic standard of what was possible, and raised my energetic um not only my energetic standard, but just demystified and normalized the idea that there are people in the world who have this type of money, and that I'm worthy to access them, or to be able to support them. So the worthiness piece was really first about me believing that it even was possible. Because when we don't feel worthy of either talking about those amounts of money or working with those amounts of money, typically it's because we don't even think that it's available to us. So in being surrounded by people that deeply, deeply, not even just believed, but knew that that was available to them, it made me believe that it was also available to me. And that is what created the worthiness.
And just as you were surrounding yourself with millionaires, billionaires, around that time as well, you were studying channelers and you were studying people like Esther Hicks,
Yeah.
channeling Eric, Cryon. I saw you just had him on your show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm super interested to know how applying that same rule of who you surround yourself with opens up the worthiness and your ability to create that. How was it like when you started listening to channelers, and what did that activate in you?
So I started listening to channelers when I was in college. So this was before I even got to New York. So it was already like a part of my spiritual routine, so to speak. But even when I was working in finance, it's funny. I would have like this long, intense day of um, building my book of business, that type of thing, and then going home and like binge watching Bashar and all these people. And at the time, there wasn't a real, I wouldn't even call it like studying in an intentional way to try to gain something to even eventually do this work. I was just genuinely obsessed with spirituality. It's sort of like when you're doing something that's preparing you for something that you can't even see yet. Because I actually never saw myself as a channeler, even though I knew that I heard spirit, but I would use that voice for myself. I never saw myself as a channeler, but I was obsessed with channelers. I was obsessed with channeling. Like the very first time I stumbled across Esther Hicks, and she's channeling Abraham, and it probably took me a little bit to even grasp what she was doing. Maybe like after a few times of watching her, I just liked the frequency of it. And then um I think one day I was listening to a particular like workshop or something like that, and it clicked. She's channeling. And something in my being was just fully on board with it, loved it, didn't have an issue accepting that that was a thing. And from that point forward, I really just loved, I just fell in love with it. I was just obsessed. But I didn't have a
Mm.
goal, if that makes sense. I didn't
Yeah.
go home and think, I'm going to study these people so I can become a channeler. I actually thought, yeah, that just wasn't a part of what I thought was going on.
Until a little medicine that we call LSD came around.
Well, yeah, so the timelines get kind of blurry here because I had my LSD experience. After that, it was very apparent to me that I was hearing spirit. And I'll just say just pure source. It's like it didn't turn off. Even still, however, I did not consider myself to be a channeler. I don't know why. So shortly after that is when I actually started discovering channelers. After I had my LSD experience, huge awakening, get reabsorbed into pure source, I knew I was here to be a spiritual teacher. That was shown to me, that was revealed to me. I didn't know how. I didn't know the parameters around how that would unfold. But shortly after that, I start discovering different channelers and I was obsessed. But even still, I just didn't consider myself to be a channeler.
Hmm. And when you started hearing these voices and then source started to speak through you in a way, was it a process of I'm going to intentionally make a space where I'm going to channel, or was this a gradual process that happened spontaneously?
Gradual process. So it took time for me to even recognize what was happening because it was so, the way that source communicates with me, it's sort of like I have a direct line. So it's so integrated in just how I think, how I act, how I show up. Like there's very little separation, if that makes sense. And so it made it, I believe that made it difficult for me to identify as as a channeler or recognize that that was happening, um, until, what happens is spirit starts making it very clear when it's time for you to shift into a different path. And so being guided to different people, mediums, psychics, other channelers who could help me piece together what was going on, that was actually a big part of me recognizing, oh, it is going to look this way or it works this way. And I always felt like me being a spiritual teacher would be something that was like far out in the future, but it came faster. And so you go, "Oh, it's time to do that now." You know what I mean? So that's sort of how it worked for me. Very gradual, but it was always there, and it just got increasingly became more dominant in terms of, okay, this is what you are here to do right now.
Mm. And I can resonate with you on this because being in, let's say, younger vessels, it almost, it's like a belief system or like a collective thing that we have to overcome of, are we able to do this work
Mhm.
and still be in a young vessel? And it's like you start questioning yourself, why am I able to absorb this conversation or this information so easily? Why does it just feel natural?
Yes.
What do you have to say also on that aspect of younger souls, not younger souls, younger vessels,
Mhm,
waking
mhm.
up to their own truth and being able to step into this work, not only as a student, but also as a teacher?
What I'll say is for me in my experience, what was really challenging was not seeing anyone who looked like me or even presented themselves, I would say, in a more modern way. So, as a woman, as a Black woman, but then also as someone who doesn't fit the spiritual, package of, I don't know, I'm dressing in white gowns every day or wearing like a head wrap. And those are beautiful expressions, but it just was not my expression. And so, because I did not see that, it actually created a lot of insecurity within me in terms of I felt like people are not going to think I'm credible, or they're not going to believe me, or they're going to, we've been spoon-fed this image of what it means to be spiritual. So if there was advice I could give to people who are in younger vessels right now, it would be to own your authentic expression. Don't worry about if people are going to understand you or if it looks like the way that older channelers have done it, because you're here to bring in a new frequency. You're here to embody a new expression of spirituality and source. And I truly believe humanity is raising its consciousness to a point of no longer compartmentalizing what's spiritual and what's not spiritual, and allowing it to be a fully immersive expression of who we are.
It's the multi-dimensionality that, Source
Yes.
has been speaking about. And you've also mentioned that there are moments in your life where you're able to access future potentials of you, bring that into your reality so you can set a path that goes along your highest timeline. So I'm interested to know what that experience has been like for you and how we can begin to access potentials and greater potentials of ourselves from the future down into the present moment.
It's all about downloading the beliefs, the frequency, the behaviors of the version of yourself you want to embody. And anybody can communicate with a parallel version of themselves, and this can be filtered through your own higher self or source or whatever guides and masters you feel calibrated to, and begin to understand, how do I vibrate as this version of me vibrates? That's what it's all about. When this person wakes up in the morning, how do they feel? What is their thought process? What behaviors do they engage in? What type of people do they hang around? What places, where do they go? And you can train yourself vibrationally to adopt that frequency and those characteristics by putting yourself in that frame of existence as much as possible. And so for me, in shifting my reality in the ways that I've wanted to, it's been all about surrounding myself with people who have the things that I want, or experiencing the things that I want to experience, or going to places that carry the vibration of what I would like to uh, integrate within my own frequency, binge watching channelers or people who are vibrating in the consciousness that I would like to be. So those are all like practical tools and steps that I would give people to tapping into a parallel identity, a parallel aspect of them.
In your life, what has been one of those moments where you've been able to draw in an experience that you're living now, living out right now in your present reality, that you've sort of tuned into that method of feeling the frequency, the vibration of that future self? What has that been like for you?
Just pinpointing like a very specific experience of doing that. I had an experience where this was as I was transitioning out of finance, where it all started to just become apparent that it was time to move on. But nonetheless, there was sort of there was like a legal settlement. I haven't actually spoken about this like publicly. There was a legal settlement thing that I was going through with a specific institution. And at the time, it was really a high pressured scenario, because it really could have went in so many different directions. And that's usually what creates fear for people, right? Is, okay, I have my worst case scenario, but then this is my best case scenario. And so over the duration of that time, and if anybody has ever had like a legal thing, it's really mentally exhausting because it could just drag out on and on and on. And so instead of allowing myself every day to be overwhelmed by the anxiety of what's going to happen or how is this going to happen, or you know what I mean, I would visualize the outcome, the best case scenario. I would play into that best case scenario as much as possible. And so nonetheless, things ended up working out in my favor. I actually manifested like 6 figures out of that whole thing. And one of the processes that I used is scripting. I would write out as if I had already manifested the best case scenario. I'm so happy and thankful that this worked out exactly as I needed it to work out for me. It's so incredible that the universe supported me with, shifting through this experience. And there's just so many things you can say to just vibrationally ramp yourself up to vibrate as the version of you that is experiencing the best case scenario. So what happened was I got literally, it's so crazy from one day to the next. Like I woke up the next morning and 6 figures in my bank account from working with these techniques and strategies. And then I moved on to a better vibrating and feeling situation where I was making 3 times the money, and the people that I was working with, it was so much better. So I'm just trying not to say names here for legal purposes, in terms of these
We don't want to get Erin sued out here.
Yeah,
Please.
exactly. However, if you go follow me on LinkedIn, you could probably piece it together. But nonetheless, yeah, that's a very real example of me working with my energy and universal laws to tap into a parallel reality.
Yeah. I was in a legal settlement as well with a past business, and it dragged on for, oh my God, 8 months, 9 months.
Yep.
And I was 21, 22 at the time, and had no idea about this world, what was going on. And I just wanted to stop and start my podcast and do the things I was passionate about. And I had so much like fire in me and so much motivation. And I end up going to a Joe Dispenza retreat in Cancun. And one of the meditations was changing boxes. So you're basically in that meditation, taking a current issue in your life and changing the box to a different issue where that issue is no longer present. And when I went into that retreat, I don't know why, but I was manifesting freedom from this legal settlement. I really wanted to get out of it. And I had on my iPhone a screen, my background screen was a man with wings. And I don't know why, for me, wings represent freedom. So I wanted something for my subconscious to integrate and start feeling into what freedom would actually be like. What is it like to have wings? What is it like to fly away from this situation in many ways? And we're in that meditation, and I see myself literally grow wings, move on from the situation, fly up, go out, and then I leave that meditation. I barely checked my phone during that retreat, but the one time I did, I had a text message from our legal counselor saying the other party is ready to sign a settlement. And I'm like, no way.
Wow.
Like quantum leap.
Yes,
Quantum leap.
it's a quantum leap. And it's when we get into the world of quantum, the solution or the outcome that you're looking for is a frequency away. It's like if you had a remote and you just decided, I want to change the channel. It's literally that simple. But we get so attached to the drama and the chaos of what's happening in the present that we keep remanifesting the experience of the same thing, or recycling through the same timeline or the same, parallels that feel and look the same, which creates that experience of this is dragging out. But as soon as we decide that something else is available, we switch the channel. And that,
Mm.
to me, is the true definition of abundance.
Wow. I love that. I love seeing abundance in that way, and a parallel. It's so interesting to realize that we live in a pool of parallel possibilities and universes, that just our vibration is shifting us into a specific one or the other. And speaking about switching the channels, I would love to know how you're feeling about bringing through Source, for a few questions about some more, let's say, galactic issues and things that we are curious about on the channel.
Yeah, let's do it. Source is saying, um,
Source is down.
source is down. Yeah, source is always down. Shoot.
So your process, I know you get into a state where you go into trance. So if you want to maybe tell a little bit of how you get into that state, and then we'll go into it.
So as I was mentioning, having this sort of direct line, source is very integrated within my personality already, and very, what happens is, if there's going to be a deeper channel, like in a trance sense, they will just open my crown chakra up more so that I can receive more of what they're giving. So just because I'm pregnant right now, we're not going to do a full, as deep of a trance as we can do, but it really doesn't matter because they're so blended with my frequency. So they're just saying, yeah, we're going to gently come in, and we are excited to answer your questions or talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Hmm. A big topic first is starting on unconditional love, which I've heard them say that it's actually a frequency of neutrality when you accept all that you are. I feel like that's a beautiful perspective shift of seeing love in a different lens, if you want to expand on that a little.
Yes, unconditional love is the acceptance of all things. We accept all things. Humans create labels in terms of good and bad, worthy, unworthy. We exist in neutrality, which does not mean missing of compassion. Typically, when humans hear the word neutrality, it assumes a robotic characteristic or an energy that is without emotion or feeling. However, for us, neutrality is the acceptance of all possibilities and experiences as being valid within creation. And that is the love that we feel. We feel love for every aspect of our own existence. And within that is being neutral via accepting that these potentialities have to exist for us to know ourselves, which was our original intention when we birthed this physical experience. And so every experience is actually serving the highest intention, which was for us to know ourselves experientially. So we cannot reject any aspect of us.
Hmm. Beautiful. How can two things be true at the same time?
Well, because we're infinite. The experience of time, as humans have known it, is that you are in one place or another place. But when you are in the consciousness that we're in all places simultaneously. And if you're in all places simultaneously, that also means that all truths are valid simultaneously. They may not be truths that are of the highest frequency in a sense of vibrating in absolute love. However, again, they are still valid within creation. And so they exist as simultaneously truths that a fractal of consciousness is experiencing. So to that piece or fractal of consciousness, it is a truth. It has to be a truth.
What is the light quotient, and is it changing right now on the planet?
The light quotient is changing every second depending on the version of yourself and reality that you choose to resonate with on a frequency level. So most humans are experiencing their version of Earth in a sense of gradual unfolding, as opposed to going to the parallel version of Earth that they would prefer to experience, that carries the light quotient that they would prefer. So we cannot say in this present moment that the light quotient for everyone is the same of what they're experiencing, because you are all experiencing different versions of Earth.
How did humanity then, during a time like 2020, how did humanity experience different parallel Earths during that time? I know, you, Erin, had a beautiful time during 2020. A lot of people didn't have it that way, but you're essentially shifting into a parallel Earth. What is that like?
That is correct. Each individual has a soul contract with collective unfoldings. And as a soul, you will make agreements with what is happening for the collective. So for some, it may have been relevant to experience a loss of a family member, or getting sick with the virus, or being in a predicament where they had to decide if they were going to get um, the shot or not. Those types of things, those elements are built in their own soul contract. So each of you will experience uh, varying degrees of what can happen to you or for you in your life, depending on your what we call your soul map, which is the milestones that you have accomplished in the blueprint or the plan that you have laid out for yourself as a soul. So if someone has reached a certain level of milestones in their soul map, it may be irrelevant for them to play into the theme of, I'm going to lose someone in this situation, because they don't need to learn from that. Or I'm going to lose my job because I don't want to do something, or all of these different themes. So each of you were playing out your own theme according to where you were in your own soul map and what milestones you had already accomplished or finished in your journey.
The example I like to use around the milestones is like when you're playing a Super Mario Bros. Game, you go to different stages until you get to the final, Bowser stage. But let's say when the Mario character dies in one of the milestones you're already at, you don't go back to the very beginning. You only go back to the milestone that you were already at. So I'm curious to know what key milestones for people, like as an example, what key milestones is humanity and our people individually going through right now, that we're moving through?
Well, one of the milestones that all of you have as a part of your soul plan is to remember that everyone is the same, that no one is superior or inferior to another. Every single soul here that is incarnated at this time has that as a part of their soul map. To remember that all are extensions of source. And in fact, what we'll say here is what reincarnation is when you have not remembered, within an incarnation that everyone is equal and everyone is the same, you come back as the very thing that you rejected, judged, or hated. And so many of you are playing out the themes of the energy that you were not able to accept in a former lifetime. Some of you are here to assist your others with remembering that. And some of you are here to for another opportunity to remember that while you are in a physical encasement.
That is very deep, Source. When most people, or when humanity begins to start seeing everyone as the same, how do you see that these systems that we currently have on the planet, be they education, economic, change according to that new viewpoint or perspective that we're seeing the world through?
When you recognize everyone as being unified within the same consciousness, the same spirit, which is us, you want the best for others as much as you want the best for yourself. Right now, the human consciousness vibrates in more separation, which creates competition, which is a false idea that you have power over someone else, or that you have access to something else that someone does not have, or that you're going to manipulate yourself into even getting something from us that other people cannot get from us. Because the thing is, you can't give us anything. We don't want anything. We're all eternally complete. So all of these ideas are built on you not realizing that you are everything and everything is you. As you begin to come into the awareness that all is self, you want the best for yourself. And when you want the best for yourself, you will begin creating infrastructure, opportunity, and organizations that support everyone, as opposed to a few benefiting from what is being created.
You said that humanity in the future is going to be a superpower race. What do you mean by that?
Well, we never said that. Maybe Erin said that in terms of superpower race, because we already see you as being a superpower race. But what we'll say
Mm.
here is that humanity has much potential, and this has a lot to do with your DNA. There's dormant DNA that, when activated, will allow you to tap into higher bandwidths of consciousness that have not been seen on this planet for a very long time.
Is that what we can refer to as going from a two or a double stranded DNA into a multi 12 strand DNA?
That is correct. That is the basic understanding. It is a little bit more complex than that, but we'll keep it there. The DNA is it is expanding into a multidimensional helix, and when that happens, different aspects of even your brain will be activated, which allow you to perceive reality differently. The example we'll use is, think about the animals and the different species on your planet that perceive different wavelengths of frequency, meaning your dog or your cat, they may hear something that you don't hear. That is because there is an activated function, an activated functionality within their brain, within their makeup, that allows them to perceive that frequency and have it be a part of their reality. And so that is what will be happening for humans, because remember, everything is here and now. They just exist on different frequency channels. So you all have not been able to perceive the frequencies that are always surrounding you. So it's less about going somewhere and it's more about seeing what has always been around you.
Because in this spiritual community, there's a lot of talk about going into and splitting into a new earth. But almost like what you're highlighting now, it's not that the earth will be different, like it'll change into a new earth, but it'll be us internally shifting inside, which will give us a reflection of a whole different experience of earth.
That is correct. As you continue to raise your vibration, as the DNA continues to activate, you shift to a parallel version of Earth where you experience more of your capacity, your capabilities, and where your functionalities of brain, gifts, etc., are more attuned to be able to experience that new Earth. So it's always you who are attuning vibrationally.
You said that you've engineered women to be leaders, and right now we're going through a rebalancing of a karmic contract between the masculine, between the feminine. For people that want a little bit more insight as to what is going on around this rebalancing, and it's beautiful to see more women step into their original blueprint as leaders. What can you tell us about that and why they were designed as leaders in the first place?
The feminine is the heart and the masculine is the head. This is not about hierarchy or competition. The energies are equal. They support each other. One cannot exist without the other in terms of what the totality of source is. However, they just have different roles. And so the feminine is the heartbeat of creation, and the masculine would be the mind of creation. And so when a civilization or planet is being led by mind, that is where distortion and a reverse polar experience can happen. And so, this initiative for us to support the feminine and remembering who she is simply her going back into her heart, her true essence that is unconditional love. But she has been sort of forced to cope with the circumstances and protect herself, which creates a wall around the heart. And so when the feminine does not believe that she is beautiful, when she has forgotten that she is love, and she no longer is able to lead a masculine or to lead the planet, that is where the ego polarity comes into the experience. And of course, this has all been assisted by what we call lower vibrational portions of the universe. You may know them to be fallen angels who whisper things to all of you that get you to operate outside of your heart and operate from ego.
When we talk about the fall of Atlantis, these fallen angels were quite involved in that process, which then led to this creation of the flood that we see in biblical texts and that we've heard. When you talk about opening the heart, now we're seeing so much advanced technology come up to the surface, which it might influence us to go straight back into the mind instead of the heart with all this advanced technology and artificial intelligence. How can we manage it this time around, not like we did in Atlantis with our technology and the advancements behind that, and still stay in our heart space while we're doing that?
We're going to answer this in two parts. The first part might shock some of you, but there actually was no fall of Atlantis. There have been many timelines of rising and falling, but what Atlantis actually was an underwater civilization that was largely hidden from humans because humans did not have the consciousness to see themselves as equal and work in togetherness with these beings. So they actually left. They chose to leave, and they sunk their city deep, 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 deep into the ocean, which you all will be discovering more of that. And so, aside from that, as it pertains to technology, everything in reality is a reflection of you. You cannot fear your reflection because you are the source of that reflection. It's less about fearing technology and it's more about accepting that technology has been born out of consciousness. And so, if you are the creator of that reality, if you are the creator of that technology, then the technology will always reflect your relationship to it. The idea is to not idolize it, to recognize that it has come from you. Even if you were to examine a camera, the camera is a replica of your human eye. not even as advanced as your human eye. So all technology is always designed from you. You are the original technology. If you are the original technology, there is nothing to be afraid of, because reality will only show you your relationship to the technology.
What can we learn from other galactic species and races with the way that they manage and use their advanced technology?
Non-attachment. They don't place technology on a pedestal. They don't idolize technology. They respect technology as they respect infinite intelligence, and they work together with technology to co-create a better reality for themselves and for the universe. And so humans, it would be great for you to see technology as your friend. See technology as a co-creative partner. See technology as an extension of source, as all things are truly source, cannot not be source. And once you integrate that into your consciousness, you will have a benevolent, harmonious relationship with technology.
You said that the Atlanteans left Earth, and I know this was what I'm about to say. This was Erin, but she said some of us are back. And to what insight do you have to share with us of why a lot of us are coming back at this time that maybe lived past versions or parallel realities of Earth where maybe things didn't go into the highest potential timeline? And what are we here to do this time around?
Each of you who comes back has a unique theme, we would say, that you are interested in playing out here, or a theme that may have been unfinished when you were here. And so some of you are back because you have a deep interest in supporting humanity and recognizing that they are equals. Many times that what you call advanced beings, when they have come here, you have idolized them. You all did the same with the Anunnaki, and that's a whole other story with some distortion that has been spread about the Anunnaki. But you have idolized them, you have worshiped them as gods, you have tried to do sacrifices and these types of things. And so many of these souls are back in a new physical avatar, a new physical encasement, to remind you that you all are the same, that you are source, that you are your own god or goddess, and there's no higher energy than you. Now, you each have different subset categories, meaning you may be, the way you're facilitating this podcast, this is your specific way. Some people may have a focus in technology. Some people may have a focus with assisting women and children, and thus and so forth. It depends on what things your soul has been involved in, and what is of interest and importance.
Is there anything that you would like to clear up around the Anunnaki story, which is coming a lot on the surface right now on the planet?
The Anunnaki assisted in many of your early developments. Erin was here as an Anunnaki who assisted with ancient Greece. She gave information on water filtration systems, irrigation, etc. And again, in the Egyptian timelines with building pyramids, which are landing pads. And so um, these beings were not gods, but they were seen as gods because they did arrive in spaceships, and they did have on sort of spaceship looking apparel, and that's just for breathing assistance that they needed here in this level of density. And the distortion that occurred was that they were somehow better, and worshiping began happening and these different types of things. And so, similar to the Atlanteans, they ended up leaving. So many of the beings who have been here to assist you end up leaving because of the human's inability to recognize that all are one. And that is what we will say about the Anunnaki. We will say the stories of Enki and Enlil are false. And we will also say that the Anunnaki were not here to turn you into slaves. Now, in every group of beings, you have the potential to have some beings who have some self-serving attitudes. But overall, the story of the Anunnaki is that they have been in assistance to humanity. And we want to clear up these claims because the lower vibrational energies are the ones who spread this information to keep you in, we'll call it a mystical thinking paradigm.
I see. And is there a reason specific to humans of why we haven't, up until this point, been able to see things from that oneness perspective, and why we're always putting things above us in a pedestal or worshiping? Is there a specific reason behind that creation, that design?
Well, serves a multidimensional purpose. On one end, it allows you to forget who you are so you can have the experience of remembering. And for the soul, remembering is the highest journey that one can take. And on the other end, you have factors and influences in this particular dimension that we've been mentioning that influence you to believe certain things about yourself. So again, two things can be true simultaneously. You can be here by design for the highest expansion of your soul to have the journey of forgetting to remember, while also being influenced by external energies that seek to keep you in certain levels of consciousness wherein they can temporarily benefit. We want to emphasize temporarily.
Why emphasize the temporary part?
Because the eternal truth is that you all will come home to source. But for these beings in their current density level, that is the role that they're playing, and that is where their consciousness vibrates, where they believe that they are thwarting your original will, which can never truly be the case.
I love the example that you give of a surprise party when you talk about the journey of remembering and forgetting. If you want to share it on here, I think it's also very beneficial to see it from that perspective and that analogy.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let Erin come back in. She's just getting a bit overheated right now.
Beautiful.
Okay. So the surprise party.
You want to take some water?
I'm fine. I'm okay.
I'll sip some water with you. We're good.
Okay. We'll sip some water. So,
if anyone tuning in wants to get some water, you might need some after that transmission.
The surprise party example I really love, and it's, if you were gonna throw someone a surprise party, would you want to ruin it, or would you want them to have the full experience of being shocked and surprised at this amazing thing that was orchestrated for them? And I like to apply that analogy in the context of people being okay with whatever level of consciousness others are experiencing. Because a lot of people get irritated or like triggered or upset that, well, my mom and dad are not spiritually awakening, or none of my friends get this. And so when you are sort of, you can look at this as being, you're like a secret agent of source. When you become a secret agent of source, you know that everyone is going to return to that supreme state of consciousness. So why worry? There's actually nothing to worry about. They are just in their process, they are in their journey, and their soul is getting so much value and benefit out of whatever, whatever experience they're having. So it's all okay.
Mm. And sometimes an awakened being, all it takes is their mere presence into a space or a city, which also ties into the grid work that you're doing on the planet, of just being in a space, emitting that light and that love and that wisdom that they hold. And that is also energetically shifting and helping others awaken without even the transmission of a specific word or a book or whatever you need for them to, wake up from the slumber, from the amnesia.
Correct. Sometimes the example of what you do in your life is the activation that others need to believe that something else is possible and available. It doesn't require convincing them. It doesn't require a conversation. Just be who you are. Be someone who thrives. Be someone who loves. And when they see that, it will imprint a frequency on them that reminds them of home. And when I say reminds them of home, we each have deep, deep, deep in our soul a knowingness of what it feels like to be fully immersed with the totality of source. And so there will be things in your life that will carry the vibration of that will catch your attention.
Certain people as well.
Yes, exactly.
Places.
Yes.
Have there been any places for you? I mean, for me, being in Egypt was that homecoming and feeling that energy. So I don't know if any of them, for you, any places on earth have activated that.
By far, one of the most activating places that I've been is Mount Shasta in California. I can't even begin to describe what happened to me there. But yeah, that place is very quantum. It could be a very quantum place.
Talk to us about Telos.
Telos being inner earth, underground civilization. Okay, sources just letting me know there's also some distortion with that in terms of the information that we have. But yes, there are a collective of galactic beings and inner earth humans who work together to support the planet at different periods of time. I'm hearing mainly they do a lot of frequency stabilization with placing crystals at different grid points around the planet and even inside, beneath the surface that allows us to stabilize our electromagnetic field here on Earth. But they do a lot of different things.
Yeah. I was just talking to JJ, and she was just in Mount Shasta for the
I
8-8
saw that.
portal. And she's like, you have no idea how many ships we saw on that trip. And,
Oh yeah.
now we're talking about inner Earth. Ships sort of sound more like outer Earth. What is the role of these ships that are beginning to appear for people? I know it's not super mainstream out into the public about these sightings, but people individually are having sightings and they don't know how to explain why that's happening to them.
What happens is at the moment the individual will raise their frequency in some type of way that will allow the experience of co-creating with those beings um, to happen. So they will shift to the parallel reality where these beings can make themselves visible. And usually when they make themselves visible, it's an activation for you. It's it's a sort of allowing you to really accept that there's much more to reality than we've been programmed to believe and think. because the more of us that can have an experience for ourselves, right? It's different when someone says, "Hey, I saw a UFO," than when you can say, "I experienced it," because there's also like an energetic exchange that takes place and you can feel it in your being that something just happened. The more of us that are able to have those personalized experiences, what happens is collectively we can shift to the parallel timeline where they can appear or arrive, that type of thing, because the
Because you had a
belief
moment in your
level
life. Go
has
ahead.
increased.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up that moment in your life that you called the teenage Kanye era, where essentially you were going through all of these deep activations,
Oh my
remembrances,
gosh.
experiences,
I was
thinking
so
that like I'm not crazy. Is everyone else around
Everybody
me
else is
crazy because I'm
crazy.
having this experience? What was that moment in your life like for people that are also
Oh
maybe going
man.
through their own teenage Kanye era?
Wow, you've really done your homework here. Um Teenage Kanye era for me. I call it that because what we've seen with Kanye as a personality, it oftentimes is being like this genius, but also this sense of being deeply frustrated. Deeply
Yeah,
frustrated with
like
the with
misunderstood.
and misunderstood. And so at the particular time in my life when I was awakening and stumbled into psychedelics and just operating in a completely different consciousness than those around me, and trying to have conversations with people or bring awareness to certain ideas, and the rejection that you can receive can bring out the rebel inside of you. So I think people respond to rejection differently. For me, probably because I'm a Leo, that type of thing probably has something to do with um, my astrological makeup and personality. It brought out more of a rebellious, like, you people don't know anything type of energy. But over time, I like to call it just spiritual maturity. As more spiritual maturity began to settle within my being, that's when the higher truths of being comfortable with where other people were in their journey began to just unlock in my consciousness. And I was able to not be in that, like, super agitated state.
It is true that the more we resist something, the more we see it in our reality. And speaking on that spiritual maturity, when you get out of that rebellious state, because I've been there, and sometimes it even dips into a little bit here and there,
Yeah.
especially with family. Um,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother
Family's
topic.
a big pillar of that.
But your family actually was very open and accepting when you opened up about your channeling and the work that you do, right?
Yes. Um in terms of when I went public with it, but when I was actually going through my spiritual awakening, no. It's not that they rejected it, so to speak. They literally just thought I was losing my mind. And it's not even because I would try to have spiritual conversations with them, because I already knew or had a sense that they just weren't there, that it wasn't something I could share with them, so I didn't try to share it with them. But just by being me, the decisions that I was making in my life, that appeared to be extremely risky, or the types of things that I would say, or how I would talk about politics, I know that was really like triggering to them. Or it was never actually, let me sit you down and explain, I had a spiritual awakening. It was just more so in how it showed up, how it began to show up in my opinions, in my thoughts, in my conversation, and decisions that I would make in my life. And yeah, they thought that they just didn't get it. They just didn't get it. So a part of that rebellious attitude came online through also coping with that, because they really just didn't understand my vision, even on a practical level of me wanting to go to Wall Street and become a wealth advisor and all these things. They'd never seen someone that looked like us go and do that. So even that to them seemed very unrealistic. That's probably a better term. They thought that I was very unrealistic, ungrounded. I probably came off as like very, like this crazy genius energy. um but when it was time for me to sort of step into this work publicly, and I'll never forget, I'm like, holy shit, like I have to tell them because it was going to be public. I didn't want, someone to see it and then they find out that way. So I'm like literally shaking, like my hand is shaking, and I like sit my mom and my sister down first and I'm like, I have something to tell you. And they're like, you're pregnant. I'm like, no. They're like, you're getting married. I'm like,
That'll be in
no.
a few years.
Yeah. And I'm like, I think I say, I'm a channeler. And they're like, what's that? So then I changed it and I said, like a psychic medium. And then they go, oh. And I think my sister goes, that makes sense for you.
I see you in that. I see
It's
you
like
in that.
I think for them it probably did patch some things together about me.
Hmm.
And so they have been
Does that
supportive
run?
thus far.
Yeah, because I have talked to other channelers and psychic mediums that have mentioned that those abilities run in families as well and in generational lines. And I've had a psychic medium that has come from a lineage of psychic mediums. Do you have anyone in your family that you could sort of see like, oh, they're doing sort of what I'm doing, that
Mhm.
allowed you to identify and not feel so out of place with your family around that?
No, because my family is extremely Christian. Um
Mm.
and so no, I didn't have anyone that I could say, "Oh, they're doing anything outside of the norm of, Christianity." However, what I will say in conversations with my mom, as I've explained more to her about what I do, and she's been extremely receptive. And it's funny because my guides told me like she's gonna be receptive because she has kind of like a soul knowing. But she has shared with me some of her own intuitive experiences. So I would say that she has a degree of her own intuitive abilities and gifts. Hers more so works through her dreams. That she just didn't know. She didn't, probably didn't have anybody to talk about it with, didn't know what it was, but I can completely see a piece of that coming from her because with a lot of my family, what I also recognize is they are very high vibrational. Like I have a high vibrational family. So I can see on a DNA or lineage level why I would choose to incarnate into this particular line of, I'll call it line of energy.
That was what I was going to ask you next of, do we choose the families that we go into? And you sort of just highlighted that yes, we do. But and
100%.
what would you like to add on to that?
100%. Well, because you have an objective, you have an intention. So you're going to choose the setup that is going to be the catalyst for you to become who you need to be or to be equipped with certain information or skills or things that you need, or even on a DNA level. A lot of souls choose where they're going to incarnate based on frequency of DNA because DNA vibrates at a particular frequency. So if I'm a very, very high vibrating energy, I need to choose a lineage that would at least allow me to hold a, a percentage of my consciousness when I come in. When you first come in, it's not going to be the full consciousness. Well, at least, those of us who are older who have come in, because we've all been working on the vibration of the DNA. But yeah, you're going to choose a lineage where a certain amount of vibrational work has been done to where the DNA will even be able to hold your energy as a consciousness. So when I say I can recognize that I have a high vibrational family, even if they're not necessarily spiritually consciously awakened, all of them, who they are in their essence, in their being, I could tell it was a huge part of why I chose that family to incarnate into.
So it's the DNA itself that allows the consciousness or light quotient to come in at higher degrees.
Correct. So
Wow.
if we're talking about my son, because I've basically activated my DNA to a certain point, when he comes in, he will be able to hold more consciousness in his vessel. And so all of the new children who are coming in, the new souls who are coming in, because we've rehabilitated and repaired the DNA to a certain frequency, they can now come, and they can come holding more of their gifts, more of their consciousness, more of their full soul's energy. And so one more thing on this, at different points of my healing and awakening, I've had to integrate higher aspects of my soul, like bring them back into my energy, because the DNA was ready for that level of consciousness to be integrated.
I think I heard Source say this in another podcast, but essentially it was they were explaining that the imbalance of light and dark energy sent out a universal call for assistance on Earth. And Dolores Cannon talks a lot about this in her books, about the 3 waves of volunteers. Do you see that there is a 4th wave, as you just mentioned, that the children that are coming into the planet will also have more potential to integrate their light and their consciousness? What is the role of that next wave of children that are coming onto the planet?
Well, there will continue to be waves of energies or souls coming in who can hold more of their consciousness. But what this next wave, what they're really about, is getting us to create infrastructure that is a reflection of unity consciousness. And so a lot of people think that money's going to go away, or schooling's going to go away, or like all these things are just going to from one day to the next disappear, and it's not going to work that way. These souls are going to come in, and you're going to see them use their energy to create change in these spaces and to rebuild infrastructure. And it has a lot to do with technology as well, I'm hearing, in a way that incorporates spiritual principles. You see, spirituality has been separate from how we have built the world that we live in. But you're going to see businesses, you're going to see all of these infrastructures grow to incorporate spirituality into their core values, and that is how you create a high vibrating civilization that serves all.
Has Earth been there before with other civilizations? Or is this the first time it's happening on the planet?
Earth has been there before. There have been many phases. It gets complex because now they're talking about parallel versions of Earth, that have destructed themselves, parallel versions of Earth that have been in more of the golden age frequency. And so what's actually happening is we have beings from parallel versions of Earth who have both destroyed themselves and who are both and also experiencing a golden age right now, supporting us in the right direction.
So one of them is telling us, "Don't go here," and then the other is like, "Hey, if you go here,
Yeah,
this will be good."
exactly. It's a little bit of both. So it's
Different teacher.
it gets really. I'm just getting like a vision into the field right now of just how many types of beings and consciousnesses that are assisting us. that can tunnel into our reality and give information or implant ideas, or they also learn from us as well. Source wants us to know that too.
Who are those beings and how can we start to make our own connections with them?
Over time, they will continue to reveal themselves in terms of a specific name. Um, I'm getting an example now of the energy that Bashar channels, the Esasani, who are apparently a future version of the human race that are hybrids connected to a parallel version of humanity that did destroy itself. That's just one example of a group, but they're not giving me specific names right now. But over time, more of them will make themselves known by name. But as of now, it's not really relevant because really humans right now just need to get the basics. In the basics being you are the creator of your reality. That's literally the
Number one.
core principle of who you are. And if you don't get that, nothing else really makes sense. So sources being like really, I don't know, they're just like there's so much we could tell you, but does it really matter right now? It doesn't if you don't understand who you are as a creator.
Yeah. And that's one of the most important principles. But if there are any other key principles from the basics that we can understand, what would they be?
You have a point of attraction at all times. Your point of attraction is the vibrational signal that you radiate out that determines the channel within reality that you experience. And we know you all have heard this through law of attraction teachings in so many different ways, and we've delivered it through so many different teachers and in so many with so many different types of examples. But it is because in every dimension, in every universe, this is the core principle. And if you don't get it, you don't get to go to higher dimensions if you don't understand this is the core. You are a frequency itself.
Yeah. With the law of attraction, I've heard you say that we should also be calling it the law of transfiguration. What are the differences between seeing it as how we've traditionally seen law of attraction versus transfiguring? That's maybe more quantum.
What did I call this? Yeah, I can't think of this. I know what you're saying. I can't remember the exact word that I called it. I think it was the law of, okay, maybe, okay, we're just gonna go with the reorganization of energy, reorganization of particles, in subatomic matter. That's really what happens, is that reality will reorganize itself energetically to present the picture that you want. It's a little bit more complicated to go into that type of thinking consistently. However, for people who are maybe very science based or like to understand things in a practical, mechanical way, it's a great way to understand um, how and why reality changes. So essentially, these parallel realities that we're talking about are just on a quantum level. If we were to look at the atoms, the particles, and the molecules, they're just organized in a different way. It's like if you see a flower that's purple, it's a frequency. The way that the molecules are organized, the way that they vibrate, generates the frequency that would create the translation of the color purple. If you were to look at a flower that was pink, the molecules are just rearranged differently that create a different vibrational texture or tone that would then translate as the color of pink. You see? So these realities on a subatomic level are just organized differently. Particles rearranged.
Yeah. It's like a video game, literally. Like if you're a character in a video game and you're looking at only this screen, and you turn and then you see the rest of the world, when you're looking here, the video game doesn't have to render the rest of the things because your attention is not there. So the minute you shift the attention and your awareness of what you want to bring into your reality, then reality can start rendering those possibilities for you. Because other than that, if you're not looking even there, if you're not observing that reality for yourself, then the video game is gonna save up processing power and not even render that result for you.
Right.
It's another way to see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think video games, there's so much correlation between video games and reality.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, okay, what I want to say is there's a version of you actually in every level of the video game. And we can see levels in the video game would correlate to dimensions in reality. So in different dimensions, you have more access to consciousness. You have more ability to manipulate time. You have more ability to bilocate, trilocate, those types of things. And so whatever version within the game you are experiencing now, that sort of determines the rules, the characters, the objectives even, like the little prizes or the coins or, the tokens that you're going to collect and what's important to you, what matters to you. And then once you transcend or master that level, you go to the next level. But even though you're having the experience of going to the next level, there was always that version of you that was already on that level communicating with you anyways. So dimensional versions of us are always interacting and communicating anyways. And this would be your oversoul. Your oversoul has the supreme bird's eye view of all of these different density versions of you simultaneously. And this is why I say anyone can tap into a parallel version of themselves. You can communicate with your oversoul, and your oversoul locates a version of you within quantum reality that you want to experience and can tunnel or filter that information to you so you can have a conscious shift of becoming that.
Yeah. Erin, you have this very unique ability to go very galactic, very far out here, but also bring us back and ground us in a practical way. So I just want to commend you for that.
Oh, thank you so much.
We end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, which are just little questions that you can answer in any way that you want. But before that, I would love to send people to where they can connect with you, where you are going to be appearing most online, or where they can work with you and connect with you on a deeper level.
You can follow me on Instagram, Erin Lyons, at Erin Lyons Official. And you can check out my website, erinlyonsofficial.com, and you'll find everything that I offer there.
Yeah, beautiful. The first question I had for you, the first two are personalized to the guests, and then the last one we ask at the end of every show. The first one is, what does the number 7 mean to you? Or what does 7 mean to you?
7 is divine perfection and spiritual completion. How I've experienced the frequency of 7 in my life is synchronicities that are so mind-blowing that the only thing that you can call them are perfection. Just complete perfection.
Yeah. I was born on July 17th, so 717, and it's also been a number that has been very present in my reality, and I see it everywhere. So when I was like, I wonder what Erin's going to name her kid, and I was like, 7. Oh. There it is again. There it is again.
Wow.
Synchronicities everywhere. But this second question, it's not really a question. It's an invitation. I love the track that you created, where you incorporated your light language with healing music. And if you are feeling called to it, if not, we can definitely do it another time. But if you would like to open up a space with an activation of light language, and that's something that we've been bringing through on the podcast recently with some of our guests, and people really love it. And it's something that it goes beyond just the intellect and it really hits you straight to the heart. And I always love to end with the heart on our episodes.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm hearing is I can do a brief activation to just support the integration of everything we've talked about today, so that each listener can extract also the pieces of it that are for them. And so we will do that now. And I'm just connecting into source right now. Tarata shekatrana kiate shatrola ishatrai isa ayakona rakiate shatrai. Lekieti satrana karkala kiti shetre miakiatrania kiatrai sutrola kilkiti. Yanara kalari shitrola horkorekte satra alaishtrai satri site sheketera kamayara kule kitria shite. And so it is uttered, and so it is done.
So it is. Beautiful. The final question we call the time capsule question. It requires us to travel out around 15 to 20 years out into the future. And I chose out those time frames because I feel it is going to be a time when the younger generations of today will be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. And as any great leader, they are going to need the appropriate guidance, support, mentoring, tools to support them in that journey to be leaders of the new earth. So if you had the opportunity to, in 20 years, leave behind a time capsule for these leaders, that when they open it, they will be equipped with whatever Erin Lyons guidance and source guidance they will need for their journey ahead on what's to come on planet Earth and their mission toward our ascension. What would you include inside of the time capsule? It can be anything that your mind can conceive of. It doesn't have to be anything physical. We've had, responses that were just frequencies, a message, even just a word, whatever comes to mind. It can also be something physical as well. But what would you leave behind for the next generation of leaders?
Love is the only real truth. That's it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Mic drop. That's all they need. That's all. They're going to be like, oh, we got this.
That's it.
Beautiful. I love it. Erin, just wanted to acknowledge you again for your infinite love and wisdom that you brought not only to this show, but what you're doing in your life. And also collecting whoever is listening to this, sending all of our blessings for you to have a beautiful birth, for Seven to be welcomed into the planet in the best way possible, the smoothest transition back into physical reality, and a painless, or let's say almost painless process for you,
right?
In that process, and just sending you much love. We're here supporting you, and super grateful that we got to connect.
Thank you so much. You have such a beautiful spirit. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. Such a treat for me. And I'm wishing you and all of the listeners a phenomenal rest of your journey.
So it is. Till next time.